Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 109 of the show, and in this edition we're heading back out into snowy Eastern Europe to find the truth. How does Resident Evil Village hold up 5 years later? My name is Sai. I no longer know why we have an emoji on our Discord server that's Moreau in a Wario hat and moustache. And joining me on the panel this week, tall, dark, beautiful, and deadly with a knife, it's Lady D, but it's also Mika.
Hello.
I remember him liking Resident Evil Village at the time, really wolfing it down, but it's been a long time. 73 full moons ago, in fact, so we'll see how he feels. It's Fire Button Steve Valance.
Hi, everybody.
I looked that up, by the way, and counted. And our special guest this week, he's not actually here. It's just the Mutamycete version of his memories. It's boy wonder Adam Russell Reeves.
I'm getting mold.
Every episode of that's really taking me out. Every episode of First Aid Spray is recorded live on Discord, so join our server now to become part of our fantastic community that includes Resident Evil diehards and newbies. If you'd like, you can support the show via our merchandise store or over at patreon.com/FASprayPod for as little as $1 a month. All of this and all of our social media links can be found at our website, faspraypod.com. Small bit of housekeeping, but an exciting piece of housekeeping nonetheless. We've got some new content. It's been a while since we did like a main podcast episode, so lots to catch up on. Steve Sherwin and I did a little chat about Biohazard 4D Executor, which if you don't know what that is, like Sherwin at the time, it's a trip. It's a 17-minute CGI Resident Evil film that released in the year 2000. So we went back, watched that and talked about it, and it was good fun. We recorded it a little bit later than we planned, so currently it's Patreon exclusive, just so that we don't overlap with Village's 5th anniversary. So it will be coming to the feed at some point, but if you want to hear it right now, you can head over to Patreon for that. Over on our YouTube channel, we released the newest episode of Now That's What I Call Survival Horror, the first episode in a very long time, for Resident Evil Requiem. Kelsey and myself talked about the soundtrack for that game and my top 10 picks therein. It was a really, really good time. I highly recommend it. And also, meanwhile, over on First Aid Plays, the link for our second channel in the description of wherever you're listening to this, James and Steve are continuing their playthrough of House of Necropolis, which is like a kind of turn-based strategy survival horror game. Super weird, super interesting stuff. That's everything from us. Steve, take us into a rather stacked edition of the headlines.
The document here says blank. Read next slide. Oh, holy crap. The trailer for Zach Cregger's first Resident Evil film has been released.
Indeed. Long-awaited trailer. And James and I recorded a news video on it, so if you want to check out more of like our in-depth thoughts, that's over on our YouTube. But I will bounce it to you guys to see how you feel about it, because it's been quite a divisive thing amongst the community, and in our server as well. We've certainly had a lot of deep discussions about it. Steve, how are you feeling about our first look at the Creggerverse?
See, right, everyone's got their undercrackers in a bit of a bunch, haven't they? And I feel like someone's got to come out and say, I wasn't repulsed upon instantly, you know? If Zach Cregger had not turned around and said, yeah, it's set during the events of when Leon's doing RE2, and just said, yeah, it's my own Resident Evil story in the Resident Evil universe, this would have probably gone down a lot better, because everyone's like going, it did not snow in Raccoon City. There are not phones, smartphones in 1998. And there are no recognizable BOWs, Zach. Like, I'm entirely on board with someone doing their own interesting horror story. I do feel like we're getting a bit too fantastical from what we've seen. You know, we've got Baron Harkonnen from Dune's finally got some more work. That's great. There's just too little to tell. It's just man scared, picks up phone, runs through snowy streets. Is clearly having a bit of a crap time of it. Like, and then there's the doorway shot of the many limbed the thing.
The Thing.
That could be anything. It could be a recognizable BOW like Nyx. I really doubt it's Nyx. I really doubt it's Nyx. Like, don't get me wrong, Zach. If you hoodwink everyone and go, yeah, it was, then yeah, fair play to you, bud. Yeah, recommend Outbreak File 2. But no, I'm not instant repulsed. I just think if they hadn't said this is set during 1998 Raccoon City, we would have been fine, and people would not have been a little bit miffed.
Steve is not inventing a straw man for that argument. He's literally describing me. What is this? What's happening here? Yeah, like I said, I've given my thoughts a little bit on it already. But I don't know. I mean, where I'm settling right now is that Zach Cregger is a very credible director and filmmaker, which is a nice change of pace for Resident Evil as a movie franchise, at least. He might put together a great film, but so far I'm not necessarily enthused by the lack of any discernible Resident Evil iconography, but it's still quite early doors yet. And I guess we'll see as the months kind of ramp up towards September. Mika, how are you feeling about it so far?
I don't know. I literally just watched it right before we started talking about it. And I think that I disagree when there's no Resident Evil iconography. What happens in this trailer? A man is lost in a strange place. He's looking through drawers for ammunition or weapons. Like, that's quintessential Resident Evil vibes. Oh my goodness. He's alone and afraid. We saw zombies. I mean, come on.
According to Cregger, that's the zombie shots in the trailer are the zombie shots in the film, and then that's basically it, by the way.
My goodness.
that's cool, I guess.
Damn. I tried. But yeah, no, if that's it, then
I guess it's doomed.
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah,
I'm going to
absolutely.
watch it, and I'm going to have thoughts about it. But, like, ultimately speaking, I'm not going to go in hating it, but I'm also the person that really, really enjoyed Welcome to Raccoon City. So,
Yeah, that's fair. Adam, how are you feeling about the new Resident Evil movie?
Just on the surface of it, I think it looks like it's going to be a fun movie.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
Honestly, like I from watching this trailer, you know, I have some thoughts on it, the Resident Evilness of it all, but past that, it looks like it's going to be a fun, well-made film, and I'm excited to see it.
yeah.
I was actually listening to a podcast a fair few months ago now, and they had Zach Cregger on as like an interview guest, and he spoke a little bit about Resident Evil and something that he said on there. If you don't mind me, I have the quotes
Of course,
here. If you don't mind me pulling it. This is the thing that made me potentially worried. I know that he says he's a Resident Evil fan, but you know, the Resident Evil fandom takes all sorts. So what he said was, there's two that I'll read for you. So the first, he said, I'm in a very fortunate position with this movie where I have the same amount of control that I had for weapons. It's pretty cool. I have Final Cut. I wrote the script, and this is the movie I'm making. So that's the first thing, where it's just kind of like looks like he's been given carte blanche to kind of do what he wants, which makes sense given the trailer just having its own creatures and things like that in. So what that leads me to believe is like this is, and he said there's going to be no named characters. So if we think we're suddenly going to bump into some people or I think this is going to be a completely standalone film that just is quote unquote Raccoon City. Like, I think it's going to be a very, very loose sort of collaboration, as it were. And then the second quote, he was asked, are you working with the original writers of the Resident Evil series, or how do they feel about it? Do they even know what you're doing? And then he replied, I don't know. Hell, you can't be saddled with that. You can't be afraid of what the video game people are going to do. So I think that kind of cements this is going to be a film called Resident Evil, but, you know, it's if you could completely ignore it, and I don't think it will probably change much.
Yeah.
Saying that, like I said before, I'm actually like pretty excited to watch it and just see where it goes. But I think if we go in hyped up to be like, maybe we're going to see this, maybe we're going to see that, I think we're not going to see anything.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah, and it's a bunch of things like that, because I don't necessarily like that second quote. It's kind of like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I kind of see his perspective, and that you don't want people breathing down your neck, especially when you've been brought in and I guess promised like you're going to write direct and you're going to have like creative control over this kind of thing. He's also previously said, I would have made this movie whether or not I got the license anyway. So to your point there about like, don't go into the movie expecting to see Jill running around in the background or for it to end with a fight against a tyrant or something like that. Somebody in our server, I can't remember who said, I think I heard some lickers in the background of that trailer. I can guarantee you didn't. There is probably going to be nothing in this film that comes from the video games from like a creature variety. I would be shocked. It seems weird to do a first show and not even tease something recognizable. And instead, in the breakdown video he did with IGN, he has to point out a herb in the background, and that's about as far as we can go. That said, I agree. I don't think it's going to make it a bad movie by any means because it doesn't have Resident Evil stuff in it. I want to go in with an open mind if I can. And I do think that it will be a fun movie. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a scary movie either, but who knows? Like a 2-minute trailer is not enough to go on that case. So, yeah. To be fair, Steve, I also kind of agree. It's probably a solid first step, all things considered, and maybe people need to calm down, myself included.
Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 are now on Steam.
Finally, some good news. Some good news that we've been talking about for years. It's obviously not the big, legendary throwback pack that we wanted, that Capcom do with all their other franchises. But still, it's very, very cool that these games are on Steam. It's been that long since we recorded a podcast. This is kind of old news now, but we had to throw it in here because we've always talked about it. More accessibility to these games is welcome. So now they're on the PlayStation Store, they're on Steam and GOG. I do think that it'll only be a matter of time before they come to Game Pass and Nintendo Switch 2 in some fashion as well. I think good news overall with this one. Steve, how are you feeling about this?
This is going to sound very strange, right? But okay, they are basically the GOG port.
They're absolutely
But they have DRM added to them,
that's not great.
Which is certainly a choice. I would have felt like the killer move to make this an actually useful thing for people would have been to have like a Steam Workshop, which is basically like a easy install mod database thing for these games. Because we all know Resident Evil, especially the classic Resident Evils, they have a vibrant modding community, to say the least. Like, a big history of it. That would have been a great move. Instead, we've basically just got the GOG ports ported to Steam, which I'm going to be real with you guys. That, if you had bought the GOG ports already, you can manually add non-Steam games to Steam. you didn't need to wait for this.
That's true.
But it does open the door, I want to say, to Steam Deck playability. So that's good. Yeah. Cannot complain on that front. Besides, as Sai quite rightly pointed out, more accessibility is always a good thing. Kind of wish there were the Source Next ports and all the rest of it, but we take what we give, and don't we, Capcom?
It does feel like the sting in the tail of this is just like yet more confirmation of what the GOG guys have said infamously now in an interview when those games came to that platform. There was a conversation with someone, from that team saying Capcom just weren't interested in doing this, and we had to go to them and basically convince them. And Capcom's point of view on it were, why would people want these games? They have the superior versions now, regarding the remakes, which was, really disappointing to hear then. And yeah, the fact that these have come to Steam because GOG did it, and it is those versions moved across rather than really Capcom probably doing any work. That's disappointing, but yeah, I'll take what you can get kind of thing. Mika, how you feeling about classic RE on Steam?
I'm good with it. Like, pardon. I'm fine with it. It is no real net negatives. I admit that I didn't look into whether or not they have Steam achievements. I know some people are really
they don't know.
Into those. Okay, so then in that case, just another place to have a game I really much enjoy, and being able to play that game on the Steam Deck means I don't have to emulate it on my Steam Deck, which of course is always better than doing that. I'm down with it. Resident Evil 3 is great. It's one of my favorites in the whole series, notably.
It's just stuff like this is just like easy accessibility for, and obviously this is a franchise that's brought in so many new fans in the last 5+ years. At least now, when you have a conversation with online, or you see a conversation between people online, comparing the remakes and the originals, and the new fans are like, yeah, I'd love to, but I don't, how do I play them? At least now they're on the biggest PC platform, so they're not to say there's no excuse not to play the originals, but if you are a new fan and you're like curious, it's very easy to get these and boot them up. Any thoughts on this one, Adam?
Not too much. Like everyone said, I think it's just a good thing that they're there at least, and people can play them. Capcom gives me the kind of feeling as a company that they're not ones for looking back too much. You think about a lot of their, like, I mean, they've been going so long, right? Capcom, to me, maybe now they're one of the most prolific video game designers, just
Absolutely.
from a standpoint of age and kind of a lot of the caliber. If you think, you know, like Street Fighter 2, Mega Man, like, or Street Fighter, I guess, in general, Mega Man, like Breath of Fire,
Monster Hunter,
Dragon's Dogma, was that Capcom as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so yeah, they have like such a lineage of video games now, and it feels Onimusha, of course, yeah, and it feels like, you know, like they're happy to do nods back to previous games, you know, like, you know, Resident Evil, obviously, you know, we've had Sherry Leon as a recurring thing. There's a lot of recurring characters and themes, but it doesn't feel like they ever want to look back to the older games like as their own entities. You know, we see a lot of new stuff, but they never really often like give us, and like you said, Si, you know, like it's a case of like, yeah, there's now remakes of these, and these are what they consider like the more definitive versions even than the originals. So I think it's good that we get them, and it's good that people can play them, but I think maybe Capcom feels that they're not as good as their more recent offerings.
Sure.
Our last piece of news, Resident Evil Requiem sales update, 7 million units in 2 months. Capcom celebrates with 2 cakes.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Whoa, 2.
2 whole cakes.
2 months.
Yeah, 1 cake per month. Yes.
The first half of the cake was good, but the second half, not so good.
Very good. Yes, Leon and Grace themed cakes on social media to celebrate 7 million units, which obviously we know that the game is the fastest selling in the series at this point. And yeah, I mean, we're now on track for probably an overall all-timer. It looks like, unless something weird happens, I would fully expect Requiem to head right to the top of the pile. For some context here from over on relyonhorror.com, Remake 3 and Remake 4 sold 10.99 and 12.25 million copies in that time. Village is 13, nearly 14 million copies in total, and Requiem in 2 months is halfway to that point already. So it's a hell of an achievement. Adam, how do you feel about Requiem overall and its success?
I think it's great, right? It's great to have such a successful game for the company, regardless of what we feel about certain parts of it. You know, like I listen to the pod, obviously. I feel about the same way as you guys do. I had an absolute blast at the start, and by the end, I was just kind of like, it feels like Capcom cannot help themselves but Resident Evil 6ify things. I think that the first 1 through 6 was a slower build, and I think we're seeing a much quicker build. They can't seem to help going off the deep end, I think. So we'll see where that goes. But overall, I think it's great, you know, to sell so many copies, to have it, you know, in the era of streamers and Let's Plays, to have it kind of like blow up and have almost like, you know, we obviously have more nuanced feels about the game, but when you watch any of these streamers who aren't, you know, it's just a new big game to play. And they come away from it with almost overwhelmingly positive feelings, even the second half, because they aren't as invested in the storyline on a whole. They're just playing for the experience. I think it can only bode well for whatever comes next. And also, Zemo doesn't do anything in the whole game, and he shouldn't be there, and I don't understand it.
Mika, how you feeling about Requiem's success so far?
I enjoyed Requiem a whole lot. I only played it once. I usually play them at least twice. I'm glad that it's got the success. I think Adam said it, but they can't help themselves from trying to please everybody at the table. It's it's like it feels like they're half-assing two things. Because like parts of each system are really great independently. But I kind of want to see them fleshed out on their own a little bit more. I would love to have a game that was just all Grace's gameplay and have that be the cool, tense horror game. So that said, I also enjoy the game that Leon is playing, but they're not the same video game to me. I think that's part of the reason why there's so much success, because people definitely have a way that they can vibe with it. There's both sides of the coin. Both communities right now are really being given the thing that they've been asking for.
Sure.
I think it'll be a top timer. We'll see another big sales spike by when the DLC comes out, and then probably again right around the time that Game of the Year nominations come out.
Yeah.
So we'll get that number by the end of the year, I wager. That'd be my guess. Clip this for 6 months from now when we get to 10 million sales or 13 million.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm thrilled for it. Like, you know, it gives them more impetus to like either create more games or create more content. But as y'all said already, Capcom does kind of have a tendency to be like, okay, so this toy is done, on to the next toy, and just never look back at those old ones for more support again.
I think the thing is, and I said this on social media recently, we celebrated Requiem's success on the podcast review we did as being like, it's really nice to see a brand new story be as big as this one is. Like, the remakes sell well, but for a new mainline entry to be as big as Requiem is great. But of course, we're never really going to be able to repeat this again, and it's interesting to see if Capcom attempts it, whether it was intentional or not, like laying the groundwork that they did with Remake 2, 4, and to some extent 3 as well, but obviously 2 and 4 being the focus of like this through line of Leon's story and also Umbrella, Raccoon City and stuff, and following it up. Like, I don't know if they're going to be able to emulate the build that Requiem had. I don't think it was deliberate that those remakes have led into the new game. It'd be really clever if it did, but if they've been paying attention, maybe they can do that again with a Chris story and remake all of his games up to the next one or something. But as we just said on the previous story, so many new fans have come in. So this is like their first bit, but for many of them, their first new Resident Evil game or first Resident Evil game in general. So that obviously is a big contributor to the success moving and from this, and we'll see how that affects the plotting of releases moving forwards. I guess, you know, how game development is. The next however many games are absolutely decided, and many of them will be in various states of development anyway. So it'll be interesting to see. Steve, thoughts on the success of Requiem at this point? The runaway success?
I mean, I know. Last podcast we pretty much kicked it to death. We had feedback about being a little bit negative.
Yes.
But I still want to say that it was.
I want to say we were critical.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But we did give it a few shin kicks.
We did.
It's unsurprising though. When you look at every Resident Evil release up until now, that has always been like the sales numbers have been ridiculous particularly for a Resident Evil title. But so by this metric, by the time we finally get to Resident Evil 15 in the year 2050, we're going to be on like an infinite Mobius strip of releases. They get in there, but that's only if they can maintain momentum. Is this the peak? Is this like, can they put Leon in another game and get the same thing again? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to put 50p on the Discord and say this is going to be the last time we have this peak for a while. I think the next game, if it's a Special remake, isn't going to hit it.
Yeah.
That being said, I love me some cakes, and I'm looking forward to the DLC regardless. And we need to actually address the AI elephant in the room at some point, Capcom. Just putting it out there.
Probably a discussion for another day, certainly, but you're not wrong on that front. Right, that is quite a juicy edition of the news behind us. Let's get to what we're all here for today, which is a retrospective look back at Resident Evil Village. And now, reading the file Ethan's Diary from Resident Evil Village, in character as Ethan Winters, Mark MZ Chung, who you can find on YouTube at MZYT.
February 6th, 2021. Mia and I had another fight. I accidentally mentioned what happened 3 years ago, and she blew up at me. We finally settled down in our new life in Europe and can bring Rose up properly. But I still feel like a part of me is trapped in that hellhole back in Louisiana. I know Mia doesn't like to talk about it, but can we really just forget everything and pretend it didn't happen? Shouldn't we face what happened there so we can live our lives with Rose without it hanging over our heads? We owe her that much at least. I know Mia knows this too. She wouldn't have exploded like that at the hospital if she didn't care.
Yes, May 7th, 2021, the release date of Resident Evil Village. We podcasted about it 70 or so episodes ago, I think, which is mad. If you're listening to this episode on the day that it's released, happy birthday, Resident Evil Village, which now turns 5 years old. Seemed like a good time to look back on it. Primarily because obviously when we do review brand new Resident Evil games, it's in like the week after. So everything's very fresh and you kind of still getting your head around it. Now with 5 years, the dust has very much truly settled. And by some happenstance, and it just kind of worked out this way, this was the plan months ago. But yeah, Requiem landed a few months ago and now we're going back to Village. So it'll be interesting to talk about it in the shadow of Requiem, I guess. Just to remind you all, scores for Resident Evil Village were very positive upon release. Currently on Metacritic, the game holds early 80s across the board, 81 to 84, depending on what platform. 92% recommended on OpenCritic. Press outlets were very happy with it. Destructoid gave it 9 out of 10, so did Push Square and GameSpot. IGN gave it an 8. EGM gave it 4 out of 5. So overall, press was very, very happy with it. Sales were also strong. We've just talked about that a little bit. Village hit 3 million units in 4 days, which put it in top 3 fastest selling games of the series. In terms of Capcom's best-selling games overall, it just falls outside of the 5th spot. It is the 6th best-selling Capcom title and the 3rd best-selling Resident Evil game, under Remake 2, which has 16.8 million at the time of reading, Resident Evil 7, which has 16.4 million, and as we said, Village has 13.5 million. So before we talk about our more recent experiences with it, I'm just going to dial it back for 5 years and see if anybody remembers how they felt upon release. I've actually gone back and listened to some of our podcasts from way back because I was really curious. Adam, do you remember what your initial response to Village was like?
I feel like it was mostly positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably had a few hang-ups on some of the plot points, but I remember really enjoying it, honestly. Mm. And I think I still really enjoy it in a handful of ways, but there are other ways that have really fallen off the cliff for me. I think I definitely rose-tinted glasses, like for some of it until I looked. And then also, like, I don't know what the future of rose-tinted glasses is like back then. Like, what's the expression for
2020
the future
vision?
Looking? Yeah, 2020 vision. I wish I had more of that. But yeah, it's funny. Like I said, we'll get more into it, but I feel like there's a little bit of Resident Evil 6ifying going on into this one. But there are a lot of really, really positive things as well. I feel like if I had played, because I didn't go back and play 7 immediately before going into 8, and I think if I had, I think I would have sung a bit of a different tune, a bit of a worse tune.
Right.
So, and like I say, we can definitely get into that as we go on.
Yeah, because I said to you, hey, we're doing Village again sometime soon. And you were like, perfect. I have a lot of things to say about that game now that it's been however long. I was like, okay, great. So I'm so curious because I actually have gone through kind of a journey with it because I also was very positive about it on release. I had some hesitations like you about plot holes in the story and stuff like that. But I was a big fan of the gameplay. I appreciated it as a sequel to Resident Evil 7. And going into this recent playthrough that I finished this week, I was like, I don't think I like... Before I booted it up, I was like, I don't think I like this as much as I did on release. Like, I remember the further we get away from it, feeling less and less warmly about it. But having now finished that playthrough, we'll see. I've got things to say. I'm going to hold it back. Steve, do you remember your initial feelings on Village when it came out 5 years ago?
See, I also re-listened to our old podcast, so I can mostly just say, yeah, I think past Steve mostly just hung up on a few contrivances regarding gameplay and that one like compound segment we have to fight 50 lichens. Yeah, generally speaking, recency bias was probably doing a wonder, but yeah, past Steve really enjoyed it, I think. I would chat to him more, but he's kind of a prick.
Mika, any thoughts? Do you remember from your first time with Village back in the day?
Yeah, no, I do remember rather enjoying it. I played through it a few times on increasingly hard difficulties and like watched James play it a lot because I enjoyed watching it so much. But upon reflection, I do have amended thoughts about like the game. Not all of them quite bad, but
Interesting. Oh, I'm so excited about this. Okay, let's start with the gameplay then. Let's talk about the core gameplay loop of Resident Evil Village. The evolution from Resident Evil 7 being Capcom loves to say it's the first person game in the series. I've noticed they've increasingly said that more when they look back on the series. That's not even remotely true, but obviously at the time it was such a massive divergence, not just in story but from gameplay, tone, perspective being the big one, first person. And Village, I remember thinking at the time, this is kind of like the perfect Resident Evil sequel in the way that the first one is the horror one and the second one has horror elements, but it is, the ramping up of action that we get in the series. Resident Evil 1 to Resident Evil 2, or however you potentially look at it. Let's talk about the core, the gameplay loop, the combat and stuff like that. Steve, how do you feel about Village and the way that it plays in 2020? Big old 26.
See, coming back to this after playing Requiem, it was kind of cozy because Requiem's also a fantastic playing game. I don't think anyone's complained about the actual like shooting and sneaking around, gathering loot, smashing, which is not too different from this.
great time.
Just the initial Lycan fight absolutely kicked the crap out of me this time around. But I don't know if it's because it just knows that you've done better than this already. This suffer, Stephen, or past Steve was just on something. Like because I was getting my ass handed to me repeatedly by these guys. It's strange how little I remembered. Other than the core story beats, playing through this time. The gameplay, obviously, just trying to look around the village, poking around for supplies and loot and stuff. It was nice. The only gripe I've really got is how many points of no return it just sneaks up on you with, and then you can't do that thing anymore. And now you're likely short on gear, but it's okay. Here's some scrap, make some bullets, and go at it. No magic blood here, Ethan. You can block the sun with your hands, though. That boy still impresses me. The block and retaliate pushback because it's ridiculous moments like blocking Sturm and kicking him into a wall. It never does not make me laugh.
Yes, Ethan is in arms of steel. I was quite surprised on this playthrough. I will admit I had recently watched Village being played through, so I wonder if that was an element to it. But when I got back into this, in terms of just hitting the beats, knowing where to go and what to get, I pretty much got everything in the game, I think. Like, I wasn't too precious about certain areas. But for, like, the hub and stuff like that, I went everywhere, and I just got back into a comfy routine with it. And, yeah, it's almost like, with me and Resident Evil in general, it's so easy just to, like, get in the zone and almost, not speed run it, but, I know where everything is and where I need to be and all that kind of thing. And yeah, that happened here as well. The only thing that I found...
chat, she was asking the Discord where the grenade launcher was.
That's true. I did forget where the grenade launcher was. You're right. And I think there was probably a few moments like that where it suddenly clicked, which was quite nice to have those moments of like, why is this not coming to me? I did have one thing where, and I don't know if I knew this before, it looks like with the cooking element of the game, there is more poultry and meat that you need, and there is the perfect amount of fish. And I missed one of the fish in Moreau's reservoir. And of course, as you just said, Steve, once you leave, that's it. You get it out. You can't get back. You try to use the elevator. It says nothing happened. So I was missing the one fish to make the last recipe at the end, which was it brought up all those feelings of like, oh man, I just hate that about this and Remake 4, where many times the gating off just feels kind of arbitrary. You can't go back in Castle D for whatever reason. Even though there's no reason to go there, it'd be fun just to walk around. So that's always kind of annoyed me. But there you go. I've got a bunch of whole other things here for core gameplay, but let's move to Mika. How did you feel about how Village plays these days?
No, it feels great. It feels great playing it. I forget who I was hanging out with at the time, but I was playing it, and I think we were talking about Pragmata and how Pragmata is such a Capcom game. And Resident Evil 5 and through extension Requiem are such Capcom games in terms of how they play. They kind of have that same feel to them, which is, again, as Steve pointed out, rather cozy. I enjoy playing Village more because I think the game is fun to play than the actual storyline at like present. I've thoroughly enjoyed the time I played. I've been playing it again, and I've been having this panic spike since I mentioned the cooking game because I've been selling that shit back to the Duke for money.
I mean, to be honest, it feels very optional. I didn't cook till basically the end of the game, so it's all just kind of like, eh.
But damn, there's a button I'm not gonna get at the end of the game, so it's killing me.
That's fair. I remember Steve saying about the weapons when we first played this, and I think it is a shame that it doesn't have the Resident Evil 4 variety when it comes to weapons, where it's like these are all just options for your guns. In this, it is like, here is the better version of this class of weapon. Time to dump the old one, which is still a shame going back to it, especially following this, having the likes of Remake 4 in particular. But I do like that the game gives you a lot of choice in that. You know, as I said, you can avoid the cooking thing entirely, and if you want more money, then why not sell the fish? The scrap that enemies drop, you decide what you want to craft out of that. You decide what you want to pay for with the merchant in terms of upgrades, in terms of crafting recipes, and that kind of stuff. That whole element is one of the better things in it, Cribs, from Resident Evil 4 for me. And yeah, I'm going to put my somewhat bold statement out here, I guess. I think that Requiem gets talked about as combining the best of other titles into a melting pot a lot, as it should. It does a lot of things really well on that front, the perspectives and stuff like that. And as I say, they're both fun to play as. Resident Evil Village, also very much its own melting pot. It's the Resident Evil 7 perspective, and obviously it was only the fourth game in that engine, but being that it was from first person originally, it really felt like a Resident Evil 7 sequel. It's got Resident Evil 4's approach to arming up the player and your inventory layout and stuff like that. It's got Remake 2's weapon parts. It really, looking back on it, it's like, oh, this is fun. There's just like a bunch of Resident Evil other game ideas all in here, which kind of fits because obviously, broadly speaking, and this will probably come up several times, it is a big melting pot of ideas. Even the gameplay in general, like we'll talk about the story and the structure, we described it as feeling a bit like a funfair, and that it's very much true of the gameplay. It's just kind of like, it moves away mostly from the actual horror of 7, and it's just like, this is fun in its own right. Just go have fun and shoot the monsters. There are tense combat encounters, there are scary moments, but it is very much just here's the central location, which ride. Well, it's not even which ride you want to go on. We know it's in a particular order, but you're going to go on this ride, this ride, this ride, this ride, and they're all going to offer you something different from a gameplay perspective, as well as a tone perspective and stuff like that. Adam, how did you feel about the core gameplay of Village?
I really like the gameplay. That's not anything I have a problem with. I think it's a very satisfying gunplay. I think it's, it's more linear than 7. 7 where you kind of are backtracking and you can turn that game into sort of as long as you want it to be almost. With 7, you can like walk around so much and it's so kind of like you unlock more areas, but you can still go back. But like you were saying, with 8, it's a ride. You do a specific section at a time. It's pretty much on rails. like the village, you have a little bit more autonomy of looking around, but when you head into these sections, they all essentially have a path that you follow. And there's nothing wrong with that because it allows for more consistent set piecing. It means you won't stumble into anything that they don't want you to stumble into.
Yeah.
But it does take a little bit away from the exploration excitement side that I like of a Resident Evil. Even like 4 felt more, and this is obviously, you know, that this is, I think before even Requiem, this is the one we were sort of conflating. Oh, it's like 7, but it's also kind of like 4.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You've got your upgrade, you've got your gunplay, you've got that. But even 4 felt like it was much more of a intriguing exploration than this game does.
Interesting.
So I love the gameplay, but it feels like whenever I found something, I didn't feel a sense of like I found this thing. I felt like I was supposed to find it. So like, which may sound stupid, I'm not sure, but I love games like where I find something and I feel like I'm the person that found it, if that makes sense.
I know what you mean.
Like,
That feeling where you wonder if anyone else has found this.
Yeah, where you're like, oh, or maybe not anyone else, but you're like, maybe I'm in a group of people that found this and someone else didn't. And it didn't feel as much that in 8. Which is fine, you know, like the gameplay I really don't have any problems with, but I enjoyed it. I like the gameplay loop. I like the weapon progression. The weapons all feel good in the game. I don't think there's a weapon that, you know, there are better than others, but there's nothing where I'm just like, I hate this weapon.
Right.
So, and you know, it's almost episodic, right? It's almost like the gameplay is episodic. You have these chunks, you have these specific bosses, you have these areas. It's very, very segmented, which maybe is good for like, maybe it's because, you know, younger people have less of an attention span, or at least that's kind of like a theory, right? Because of social media, that people are so used to like small chunks of entertainment. Maybe that was an idea of like, we can basically put X amount of games into this game, whereas everything is its own chunk of entertainment. I don't know, but yeah, it's fine. I like the gameplay.
Interesting. Yeah, the gunplay I haven't really talked about particularly. Like, I don't think it blows me away these days, but it really works in the bubble and that it's in. And I do think that the weapons have a nice like weight to them, and they have a nice like. There's something about I think it's like the audio design, where there's like a hefty like clunk to a lot of these weapons when you're moving them around and fire them and reloading. They have like some real steely, I don't know, groundedness to the weapons, which is great because obviously the game itself is kind of wild and wacky, you know, fairy tale. So having Ethan wandering around with some pretty realistically unforgiving weapons in real life kind of works for me. Let's talk more broadly about the gameplay then, Adam, because you touched on a bunch of stuff that's really going to like open us up here. Talking about the broader structure of the game, all these areas, and the locations and stuff like that, and how we feel about the pacing of those kind of things. I think I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I never really noticed I didn't really ever think about the structure of Resident Evil 4 until Village came out. And as you said, at the time we were like, this is like first person Resident Evil 4. And then it clicked, where it was like, well, Resident Evil 4 also has an area with a boss. I know you could say this about every video game, technically, but it's like, it's the village with Mendez as the boss. Then you move on to the castle with this at the boss. And then you move on to this with this at the boss. And Village and RE4 have that in common. And it never occurred to me before. But yeah, let's talk about the pacing and the plotting. Mika, how did you feel about Village's structure?
I thought it was just in terms of my existing playthrough, it to me felt like the kind of game where it was designed to have each of those sessions be like each of those areas be its own like gameplay session, because it always ended on a satisfying place to stop for a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
It always ends in this thought where you're like, okay, now we catch your breath, there's a save point, there's some like loot that you get, and then you can like settle for a moment. I think that that's really cool and useful. It's funny, Adam mentioned, so used to like, bite-sized content anymore. And yeah, it definitely felt like a spot.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it before, but also, like, on the other side of that coin, you're absolutely right. But I think it also rewards you for paying attention as well. Like, even if you take a break and you come back, you're like, oh, the village has changed now. But because I remember the way that it was before, I know what's different. Or like, oh, I can go do this now. So it does reward you for keeping at it. But you're absolutely right in the sense that it like releases you for a moment. And you're like, I'm going to go take a breather and go do something else or whatever. Or, or in my case, where I'm about to go do House Beneviento, I'm going to take a break until it's daylight outside,
That's the fun house portion.
Is it fun? Steve, how you feel about the structure and the plotting and the pacing of Village?
Episodic is right on the money, isn't it? Like, my mind always goes to Crystal Maze. Like, we're going into this zone, and then we're going to this zone, and we're going to this zone. Just need Richard O'Brien to come out and go dun 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 dun. But in between each zone, there's a nice little let's do another loop of the village and see what else we can get for the Duke. Sell people's wares to get another handgun bit. Cool, neat.
It's the most grisly final challenge ever when inside the chamber where you're supposed to catch money, it's just pieces of rose.
That is a very old school Crystal Maze reference.
Canel, edit that, please. That'd be great. Right, but no, I do like it because, as you said, it's episodic. It means you can literally just like do a chunk and then you have a little cool down session, getting bits, and then you can step away and you don't lose anything. There's no like, well, assuming you were a completionist the first time around, because if you want to go back to that castle, you are boned. You want to go back to the watermill, you are boned. That's the only caveat to all of that. So you can't rewind an episode. You have to start a new game, which is. Yeah, it's a little bit rubbish. Regarding what you said about guns a little earlier, I just want to say, just in the game, they must have listened to the podcast, Capcom, because if you do the mercenaries and you unlock certain things, you can actually add the unique perks to different guns.
Oh yes,
I only discovered that on this recent playthrough because my starting handgun was healing me, and it still did not help. Furious still battered me, but that's irrelevant. The actual. The idea of going through sector, get some kind of key item that you'll use in the village to then progress into the next sector. It's a great bit of like game design and looping. It's the Resident Evil's like main core concept. You get a key and you can use it to get somewhere else, and you can also find a bonus area. And that's one of the best parts about Village. This bonus areas and bonus bosses. 4 did this as well, the 4 remake, but this I think is like the first Resident Evil with optional bosses.
Yes,
right?
I think so.
I mean, unless you count the odd Nemesis encounter, if you're a try-hard in classic RE3, maybe. Yeah, no. And that in itself is cute. It's neat, but also, why is it always big man with hammer?
Kind of is, yeah. You got big optional wolf guy.
Yeah, yeah. Alpha Vario lacking outside Louise's place that literally just tears Liam. I was going to say Leon. Unfortunately, it's Ethan who gets torn in half this time.
Yeah, it's somebody said linearity earlier, and it's kind of how I feel about the structure of it. Like, it's broken up this way on purpose, but once you've done it 1 or 2 times, once you've done it once, frankly, it does get very easy to get into that groove, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But even the quote unquote wide open spaces of the village are. Yeah, I know what this part is. You go down here, get the house key for the musician's house, go in there, get the loot and leave.
Sorry, if you'll indulge me 1 second. I think you're the biggest Mega Man fan on the podcast, right?
Sure.
Probably.
Maybe.
Like, if they'd approached that approach to it, you think, where you can choose which of the 4 lords you can batter for a key item.
It would have been
you need
so
all 4.
good.
That would have that little bit of dynamicism would have probably helped it a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say that sounds like the kind of thing that would make for like a really great mod. Like, if there are ways to make it that way, I'd be really interested in playing through that and experimenting with it. Shotgun Sinner in the chat has described it as being structured like The Legend of Zelda of Resident Evil. And coincidentally, I'm pretty sure in our first review of the podcast way back when it came out, I did say the beats of the story are picking up the parts of the Rosemary Force to save Hyrule from Vigo the Carpathian, which is still exactly how I feel about it. In terms of the locations, and we spent a lot of time talking about this when it came out, the village still stands out to me as a really great Resident Evil hub. It's almost like a single floor Resident Evil hub, which you don't usually get. Usually with mansions and hospitals and police stations, we have all these different layers on top. But this one is, being an outdoor location, this kind of an area that folds out a bit more every time you return from the dungeon. And as I said, it'll never be as good as the first time, but every time I play the game, I really do enjoy walking through it at all those different times of day. It's not the quote-unquote character they described it as in the lead up to the game, but I really like it. I think it's fantastically designed, especially when you're late in the game and you're there. Before you go to the stronghold and before you go to the factory, which is obviously your ultimate gating off from the village. That's the point of no return. Walking around it with the sun on the snow and stuff, it's gorgeously designed, and remains the strongest part of the game for me. Adam, how do you feel about the plotting and the pacing and the locations?
Yeah, classic Capcom just always seem to love to blow their load early, don't they? they can't help themselves. Like, I feel like if they had saved Castle Dimitrescu for towards the end, or like you in the middle is like, you start with Dimitrescu. It's a sandwich, right? So Dimitrescu is cool. It harkens back to like mansions, Resident Evil. It feels very Resident Evil. It has a stalker in it. Like, it's awesome, and it was like the most hyped thing pre it coming out. Like, it was just like, oh, this giant vampire lady and like all this stuff. And then you get Beneviento, which is kind of plodding, but it is good. It's scary in the places it wants to be, but it dramatically slows down the game. Yes. You go from kind of the end fight of Dimitrescu, where it's crazy, she's suddenly a dragon, you're running around, and then you come to kind of a screeching halt with this kind of haunted house. And then you go into what I consider is probably the worst section, which is the waterways. Just because I don't think anything happens there. You're pretty much just chasing the boss. You
run to one end and then run back again, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, he's chasing you or you're chasing him or vice versa, and nothing else happens. And then you go into like insane land of this giant factory, and you're like, how does this make sense from like a geological perspective, where in the mountains it's a tiny village, you're making hundreds upon hundreds of soldiers in this huge factory with like thousands of soldiers going past. You could watch them all day go past, and you're just like, what? It just, to me, it's such a screaming diversion from the rest of the game. You know, and then we swing back to end with, I want to say, like an end fight that doesn't feel earned.
Interesting.
Like, because like another classic Capcom thing is like, here's the bad guy, you'll see him at the end. You know, it's like you really don't get to grips with her that much. I wish that she was more of an overarching, you know, everyone talks about her, but you don't get the firsthand experience of what she's all about, potentially. No, I don't think.
There's that one bit right at the beginning, isn't there? After you come out of Louise's
right at
house,
the beginning, yeah.
And you kind of forget that because of all the crazy stuff that happens between then and the end.
It's crazy at that point. And then you're just like, oh, that's okay. Fair. And you know, I would have liked to have seen either the order switched up a little bit, or I think like Moreau would have made a really good, I mean, obviously the opening to the game is, for me, one of the best parts of a Resident Evil game. Like, you start, you get a little bit of a lore dump, you're at home, you get to kind of catch up from where you were from 7, right? You get that little cozy bit. Then you get kidnapped. Then you're in the village, and it's kind of crazy, and you're just like trying to survive. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. This is awesome. This is kind of like really throwing me in. And then that's where like, you know, the shoe starts to come off, I think, after that. After it kind of like, it doesn't know what to do in its quiet moments.
Interesting.
And it just kind of, it feels like the plot was made as you play the game.
Mm.
It never feels like that. It never feels big or overarching in a way that I feel it should encompass more, because you have gone from an area of America and a very specific feeling in Resident Evil 7 to kind of, whenever Capcom does Europe, they do question mark Europe, right? It's just like, it's Europe. And then it's like, okay, this is what Europe is like, you know? So, and it seems like Ethan is so, for me, like now going back to it, it felt like he's so weirdly out of his element that it's really hard for me to ground into the story. Like you said earlier, it's like a fairy tale. And it kind of feels like that as a game.
I think that's intentional, though, isn't it?
It probably is.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it services specifically Ethan and what he's been through in like a very weird, very dirty, very uncomfortable, weird familial ties, like Texas Chainsaw, inbred, like quote unquote, like vibe, family and house. And then to put that into a fairy tale afterwards, it feels like watching the first Anderson Resident Evil film and then immediately watching the last Anderson Resident Evil film and just being like, this is the storyline.
Oh my God. I completely get what you mean.
Yeah, 7 feels so grounded. And it was like a return to like Resident Evil and horror. And like, yes, it had fantastical elements. Obviously, you had mold and that, but I could buy that. But suddenly, like, the basic, like, the progenitor of Umbrella, like, is an old or an immortal woman who lives in fungus in a European mountain. It's just, it's just like, yeah, it's a fun game, but like going from 7 to 8 is too much of a juxtaposition for me, and I start to go off the rails a bit.
I definitely want to dig into some of that stuff when we talk about story, because there's stuff that I absolutely agree with.
Sorry, I got sidetracked.
I was like, you know what, he's going. I'm just gonna let him go because this is entertaining. But we need to let's talk about story when we get it. No, you're absolutely.
But yeah, just zipping back. Yes, I feel like if we were able to choose our order, would be a much more replayable and interesting game. I don't know how they would make that affect the village. I suppose it wouldn't make much of a difference. There's no skills that you get that stop you from would stop you from sequence breaking.
Key items, but like if the game knew you'd like started the second one, then it could
just give you
the one that you need. Like
exactly.
Maybe it's more complicated than that, but you know, it's an interesting
it's
idea.
not.
I'm going to ship you over to Capcom HQ and you can tell them all what for. Let's talk before. Oh, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to round off and say, yes, choosing your own way or maybe having it mixed up a little bit would have been more satisfying.
I wanted to give a bit more of a chance for everyone to talk about locations there, because we've touched on a little bit, but I think, you know, that is quite a important part of the game structure, as we've all alluded to, this kind of episodic structure and stuff. And yeah, just because Steve and Mika particularly haven't mentioned any locations that have stood out to you for better or worse on your recent playthroughs. I will say I've always been a fan of the Borg Cube Factory. I've always defended it. I enjoyed it even now. I know it's everyone's least favorite part or whatever, and maybe it is a bit generic, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy it again in kind of maybe a little bit out of spite that Resident Evil 3 Remake didn't get to have like a grimy factory and instead had another boring white lab at the end. But I don't know, I liked it. I like the enemy designs and stuff like that. And yep, House Bender Viento, never be as scary as the first time, will always make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, it will always make me uncomfortable. Mika, any standout, bad or good locations?
I mean, you mentioned Hasbeneviento, which is obviously both a high point in the video game for a lot of people, and a part that really is terrifying the first time you do it. I remember when this game was out, our dearest James, Mr. Moistowlet, was like speedrunning it pretty hard, like, and watching when he gets to Hasbeneviento every time, and how gamified that experience is when you see James do it when he's speedrunning Village. It's so funny to me because it's not scary at all. Like, it's so clinical that a moment of tension that you remember from that first time you're doing it is that moment of tension is like gone. The other thing I wanted to talk about with regard to locations has, I guess, more to do with the fact that they added the third-person camera to the game.
Oh yeah, sure,
in the most,
absolutely.
And I played a bit of it in third-person camera and decided I hated it for Ethan. Like, Ethan isn't Leon, right? So it's not like it's a jacket and a brown hair. Like it looks. And anytime that there's anything that happens, it always zooms into first person anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's the way all the cinematics were shot. So you can kind of tell that the game experience was meant to be delivered in one way, and they kind of added it because people asked. Back to other locations, I think that the idea that this place is very much a boardwalk thoroughfare experience really does come into play with the different locations you have. The haunted house, you have the fun house of mirrors, you have the shooting gallery, and they're all kind of aesthetically fit, both that mold gameplay wise and almost aesthetically. Tutti.
Steve, thoughts on locations?
I also am a Heisenberg's factory truther. You know, I'm a big fan of the Wolfenstein diesel punk thing with the soldats. You know, some of them are a bit tanky and ridiculous, I'll grant you, all right? But Sturm's funny, and the general vibe of the entire area is that right level of creepy and oppressive, and you can get jumped around corner. Plus, there's a thing Si said in the previous podcast, I'm going to steal it. It does at times feel like a steampunk Borg cube with them pulling out of the walls. And that is just such a great vibe. You know, people really ripped into that area on launch. And I'll turn around and say, you really played through the Stronghold and thought that was better than Wolfenstein. All right, okay. The Stronghold is bland sandstone. All right, you go, oh, it's a really nice crystal cave. And then it's just crap. All right. Just before then, you get Otto's Mill, which has got like 1,000 times more character and 3 enemies in it. Like, I would take 3 enemies any day of the week over 50 lichens in a cave. No way is that beating. Like, obviously, everyone's going to say Dimitrescu Castle's fantastic. Of course, it's evoking a castle, a regal Gothic bit of architecture in Resident Evil is like it. Not to say it's passé and it's a bit been there, done that, but we have had so many mansions and fancy houses. You know, it's nice that we had a nightmare factory, and not a pristine lab nightmare factory.
Not allowed to be seen.
Run-down, busted, clunky, horrible place with the world's fanciest elevator. You know, pretty good. Run of the mill maybe is literally the windmills. Yeah. They're okay.
Hey, but
the village itself, yeah. But the village itself, the way it evolves over time, and you know, you get a little bit more expanded access each time. It's cool, and then eventually, obviously, the last time you see it, it's getting blown to shreds. Unless you play Shadows of Rose DLC, in which case it's got some weird end of Evangelion stuff going on. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. No one can look me in the eye and say Heisenberg's factory is the worst part. I will say that with my full chest.
Agreed. Before we get into story, then the last thing I want to talk about in terms of gameplay is the enemy variety. I just wanted to talk about enemies in this game, just because I thought that this was a noted highlight at the time compared to Resident Evil 7, and I do think it's still a strong suit of the game. And again, we've spent the last hour talking about the separation of all the different parts of this game. And many of them have their own unique enemies and boss fights and stuff like that. I think the boss fights in particular in this game are really quite something. Some of them are good, some of them not so much. It is kind of like Resident Evil 6 in how mad some of the mutations get. But for me, it works more in this game, being that this does have that sort of fairy tale-esque quality to it. I think, Heisenberg Tron is still god awful. I think I might be slightly softer on him just because I'm kind of like okay with the silliness of the game more than ever, perhaps. But being face down with the actual boss fight itself, I didn't want to do it. It's a bad boss fight and a stupid design. Lots of scripted events in the game with Lady D, which is unfortunate. Every time I see her on a Village playthrough, it's in exactly the same places, in exactly the same ways. Because I have a certain pace and structure to how I play the game, I expect. But that's a problem. Like, I'm never that structure and pace is never challenged by Lady D. She is, unfortunately, despite the hype around her as a character, the worst stalker enemy in the series, more so than Remake 3 Nemesis. She doesn't do anything. She kind of just gets in the way, and that's if you see her at all. But the thing for me with the enemies I just wanted to quickly shout out was the Morika hauler dudes, the kind of ghoulish zombies. I still think are cool. When you get accidentally close to them, they're grim to look at in the best way. But also, I will never get to see the Lycans again. So I'm glad that at this point in my experiences with Resident Evil Village, I think they steal the show for the whole game. In a game with Lady D and the big baby mutant, the real backbone of Village is how fun it is to fight the Lycans. They've got that iconic raw sound effect that you all just heard in your head as soon as I said it. That the one. The way their eyes glint out from the darkness to you is terrifying, especially how quickly they can be on you after they spot you. I think they're the scariest common enemy in Resident Evil history for me, partly because of how quickly they can move and how aggressive they can be. And the terrifying glowing eyes just gets me. I think they're slept on when it comes to Village. They are the backbone of the experience. As I said, exploring the Village itself is great, and shooting the Wolfmen is my favourite bit. I could have done with more variety of it, perhaps. It's always strange to me that we've seen them riding on horseback right at the beginning of the game, and then that never comes back around in any form, which is a shame. We'll talk more about... I want to talk about the cuts and stuff as we get into it. But shout out to the Lycans. I think they don't get talked about enough, I think is the point I'm trying to make. Steve, what are your thoughts on enemy variety?
Generally, I do like the Lycans, although I'm more of a sold-out pilled guy. I think they're okay, though. They literally, they are, take the Ganado and supercharge them.
Yeah.
Make them a little bit more bestial. And in that way, they go from being zombies that hurl verbal abuse and chuck the odd hatchet to pouncing on you. They will close the gap fast, especially on harder difficulties, and can be actually tricky to put down. So, yeah, no, as the quote-unquote commonest enemy, they are absolutely the deadliest, no question. In retrospect, you have to look at obviously Village. It's coming after 7, and 7 had mold on 4 legs, chunky mold, bosses.
The DLC had Mama Mold as well.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, really pushing the boat out. Whereas we've got 4 different variants of zombie. We've got a flying zombie with a tongue. We've got 3 versions of Lycan if you count hatchet, claws, metal armor, and that's just your baseline fodder. Then you've got big wolves, you've got the daughters, you've got Lady D, and all the rest of the bosses. That's a good roster. It's even stronger in variety than Requiems.
Mm-hmm.
Just point that out there, guys. The new Resident Evil that sold 7 million in 2 weeks, 2 months. Jesus, I can't believe it's been 2 months. That is still a bar that has yet to be met by a mainline series title, I feel like, in the RE engine. Mm-hmm. And, all right, some of them are feeling like reskins, like the Morikas, the Haulers, and the other dudes whose name escapes me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Do I think that they will all be remembered if they ever do a Super Mercenaries? Well, I damn well hope that they get a stage. Like, I would put them in it. The last thing they should not be in is RE-verse. Let's put it
Oh
that way.
God, yeah, Jesus, yeah, the Lycans in that, isn't it? That's weird. Adam, what are your thoughts on the enemies in Village?
Yeah, great. Definitely coming from 7, that was a big improvement, you know. And I understand why 7 was 7. It makes sense.
Totally.
But it was nice to have an actual suite of enemies to go against, and different things to learn and different things to look at. I would agree on Lady Dimitrescu. Even on my first playthrough, I was never like, you could walk around a coffee table from her, and you could just do that forever.
Yeah.
And I never once, when she was stalking me, felt threatened. I don't think. Because I was like, I can outpace her and I can outmaneuver her. She does not a one thing. To be hit by her, you have to really work hard to get hit by her. So, but the Lycans as well. What a great enemy, right? Like, I was so, when the first kind of rumors came out and people were saying, oh, werewolves, that I was just like, oh no.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Oh no!
Yeah,
please don't. And then it was vampires and werewolves, and I was like, "We are Twilighting this hard."
Yeah,
and I was so worried, and I still don't know how much I like the flavor of the Lycan idea, but I really love the execution of the enemy type. I don't think you ever feel comfortable or at ease when you have a pack going for you. They feel smart. They move in an incredibly effective way to make you waste shots, even when you're good at the game. And they're a truly unsettling enemy. They're a really, really good base enemy, and they really feel like they can push your abilities. I don't think you ever feel like, yeah, I can handle this easily, comfortably. It's until you start running around with some of the ridiculous weaponry, but that's the case of any Resident Evil game when you get those insane weapons. So I think they did a really good job. The sisters were really cool. I had a very fascinating lore, like the flies.
Yeah,
that was a super cool thing. Again, maybe not super Resident Evil-y, but such an interesting concept. Do they ever really explain the fetus?
Well, the Kadu thing.
Yeah.
Not really. It's a parasite that something comes out of somewhere. Don't know, question mark. Yeah, it's just kind of a mystery, isn't it? Like, we have the mold, but also we have this new MacGuffin that works with the mold to create these things. And it's just like gene glue, and it kind of will do whatever we want it to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird, isn't it?
Going back to when I was like, it feels like they kind of made the plot up as I played the game.
Yep.
That was one of the things that kind of bothers me, because I'm a big I love when lore is well written and smartly written. So it's annoying when things feel like they're just kind of thrown at the wall and hopefully they stick and we don't really need to explain it. And I felt like that for a few of the enemies there was some of that, but I guess that's Resident Evil. But on the whole, I thought it was good. I felt there was, obviously Beneviento didn't really have many enemies. The dolls, which I think were all hallucinations. In their entirety, I assume.
Yeah, maybe.
Outside of Angie. And then obviously the waterways, you didn't get too much there. And then the Soldats kind of, you guys really like that location. I'm not as hot on it. I don't hate it, but I don't know. I don't know if it felt, it was crossing a weird like sci-fi line for me. If that makes sense. Not that I think they were necessarily super sci-fi, but it was just a weird juxtaposition, and maybe that was the point. But it didn't gel as well for me. And then fighting Heisenberg's, he reveals his real name is John Deere, and then you got to go 10 rounds, one on one with a tractor. That's something we're best left on the cutting room floor.
Mika, how did you feel about your encounters with the various BOWs of Village?
I thought enemy design in Village was dope. I especially thought of, I mean, what was already mentioned here, that like each each zone has its own vibe, and that vibe includes the enemies therein, with the exception of the village, which is sort of like the neutral. Getting big brained about the enemy design, it's like people had their own domains and used their tools to experiment with the locals in different interesting ways, which to me is also interesting part of the game design, because it's all, reflective of the boss you fight in the zone.
Absolutely.
With regard to the enemies that you fight in there. And they were all ostensibly, working on a shared project with Mother Miranda. So like there was like this unified vision, and they were each given leave to, that's a trope that you see a lot of in like fantasy books and stuff, which brings to the like the fantastical aspect of it. Again, they each turns into a freaking dragon, a cool looking, awesome dragon. Which is to say that RE Engine gives us cool looking monsters. It always has. It always will. Yeah, he all covered quite a bit of it. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the cool enemy design in Village.
I can't believe no one's actually talked about Miranda's final design, the most like Souls-like,
she's
many-thinged
really cool.
crow lady. Like that is so out there.
I
I realize that's not,
accurate crow woman.
yeah, I know it's not like a biblically accurate
Relatable.
crow woman. I realize it's not like a regular enemy, but that's like
No,
a
totally.
standout.
I think it's one of the best boss fights in the
Vision and
series.
stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Let's
especially considering compared to Heisenberg.
Oh, God,
we
yeah.
haven't done that man dirty enough. That boss fight is trash.
yeah, the cleanse to what I remember. I talked about this in our original podcast, but doing the Heisenberg fight and then immediately following up with Ethan being killed, I was just like, oh no, this game is going really bad really fast. Then you do this whole bit as Chris, and I was like, oh no, it's all going wrong. And then that Miranda fight at the end kind of brings it right around for me. And now, reading the file, further observations from Resident Evil Village in character as Alcina Dimitrescu, Sophia Alexandria, who you can find on Instagram at echoes.of.sophia.
Further observations. 1 day since treatment. The 3 girls have stopped moving. They seem almost dead. An insect flew out of the eldest's mouth. It appears to be a common fly. 2 days since treatment. All 3 bodies are covered in flies. It appears the flies are consuming their flesh. When I opened a window, some of the flies dropped dead to the floor. It would seem the cold petrifies them. I quickly closed the window to avoid weakening the insects further. 4 days since treatment. All 3 bodies have almost been completely consumed by the insects. All that is left is a dark, writhing, human-shaped mass of creatures. It is just afternoon, and the insects have started to change color. Those around the face turned pale, and those around the lips turned a deep crimson. 6 days since treatment. The mass of insects has transformed into human bodies again. All 3 girls awoke, looking at me like newborns. I sense a bond between us, like mother and daughters. I have already decided their names: Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra.
But let's, in that case, talk about the story. We've touched on it a little bit. Certainly some questions here, as Adam has certainly quite rightfully brought up. How does this feel in context of Resident Evil 7. Obviously, we can talk about it in isolation, but it is a sequel to Resident Evil 7. And at this point, I think we can perhaps safely assume that when the game says this is the end of the Winter story, that it's probably accurate. Like, we've moved on at this point. Obviously, we have an epilogue in Shadows of Rose, but for the mainline series, we've come back now to the sort of more classic storylines and legacy characters. So, in theory, then, this is the end of the Winter story. Do we think it's a fitting end to that story? For me, I actually have a lot of time for the tone of Village. I think that I completely understand the almost whiplash from 7 to Village and how suddenly wild it gets. But I really appreciate just how dumb and goofy this game is between the groundedness of 7, one of my favorite games in the series, and Requiem. Even though we're not talking about Requiem today, we still seem to be taking pot shots at it. Incredible game. Even though we are, scratching away a little bit to it, and we've got our complaints about it, many of us, it's still an incredible game, and it's a grounded story that's taken us back to tries to take us back to the more grounded elements of Resident Evil, the pseudoscience viral stuff. So between 7, which does a great job in grounding its fantastical story, and the classic return to stuff with Requiem, in sits Village, this entirely gonzo affair. This all said, the story is a complete mess, isn't it? Character justification is terrible. We said it at the time. It's clearly been a victim of major cuts. We've got... people like to point at stuff like Ada being cut out of it, but it's very clear that that's early design work that didn't wind up going anywhere. But also there's stuff like, and I didn't realize this until recently, but Heisenberg was part of a family and he had a twin and his dad was going to be in it a whole bunch more. And what? That's all in the concept art of the gold edition, which I didn't even realize. And everyone loves to point out, quite rightfully, those first couple of trailers. I watched that first trailer just before we recorded. Most of the shots in that debut trailer are not in the game. It's from cutscenes that don't happen. The stuff with the villagers that just isn't in the game anymore. Maybe they cut it for good reason. I imagine they did cut it for good reason, for pacing wise. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, be it the pandemic or whatever, there's a load of holes in the plot because of it. From the simple stuff of characters saying things that no longer make sense, but also just the broad structure of Miranda wants your child as, I said Vigo Carpathian. She needs a child so that she might live again. But in this case, her daughter might live again. She's going to break your daughter up and put her in jars somehow. Never going to explain how that happens. And it's up to you to put her back together for reasons that are very unclear. She's testing you. She's testing the power of Rose. Rose takes down Miranda at the end because she's so powerful, but we still don't really know why. It's all a bit wishy-washy. Yeah. Mikami famously said he wrote Resident Evil 4's story in 3 weeks, which feels like a lot considering how silly that game is. Village feels like it got kind of the same treatment, where it was all put together pretty slapdash. So, yeah, I have good things to say about it. I do like the Megamycete lore. I think it's really interesting. I love how much fun we all had at the time theorizing about it and learning something new in the Resident Evil universe. Looking back on it, I really appreciate that part where it was just something fresh for us to talk about that wasn't. And I just talked about kicking Requiem. Some of the issues that I have with the story with that game is the worries about how it affects all the stuff it's connected to, all the Spencer stuff. Village, all it really affected was 7, and for the most part, tonally you might kind of have issues with the incongruence, and I completely understand that. The way they built on the Mycete in 7 in Village I thought was masterful. This is the origin point, here's all the roots, how the memory stuff works, even Shadows of Rose adding to it. It's a mixed bag. Some of the lore stuff is cool, but the actual story of the game, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is a mess. Is a mess. Adam, you've got issues with the story, I hear.
You know what the worst thing about it is? It's think of back to 7, right? We just had Resident Evil 6. It did not go well. The giraffe is now in prison, apparently. We're going to try and move past it. you know. And so Capcom says, right, everything goes in the bin, essentially, right? They say everything goes in the trash. We're going to take a swing here. So they take their swing. Brand new story, brand new feeling, brand new everything, brand new characters. And then that kind of blows up. And they're like, oh, people really like this. But I feel that they maybe didn't know what to do after that. Because they were so used to Resident Evil being through video games and even through other media at this point in time of being quite bombastic. And I feel like maybe there's some people at Capcom that couldn't let that go, that they were just like, oh, we're back in now. So we're back to the races. So all hands on deck, just like it was before. Like a lot of places maybe don't learn from their mistakes, although this one didn't turn out too badly for them, at least. But for me, yeah, it's insane. It's such whiplash. You had such fertile ground at the end of 7 with how much you have this character, Ethan, who's now an everyman. He's not a soldier. He's not a hero. He's a regular guy. His wife seemingly knowing more, but also going through like some stuff where she was like, this got way out of hand than I expected it to, the job to go. I've basically gone through this insane mental anguish of like someone basically imposing themselves as your family, and you know that it's not true, but you can't fight it really. And we had such fertile ground to for a sequel, which I almost got hinted at when they kind of, you know, in the opening of 8, they're kind of fighting. They kind of, Ethan won't give it up. She wants to just forget about it, you know, and obviously there's an imposter there, but it gives you this feeling of like this. I would have been more interested in that dynamic of like Rose is used as the plot device for both Ethan and Mia to have some sort of like really heavy journey. But it just goes off into the realms of Wonderland, and it takes you so far away from anything. You know, you guys, obviously I live in America, so it's a little different from me. Like I kind of have more of an understanding of America, and Mika obviously is American. So she has an understanding of like what America can be like. But you guys, you know, when you played Resident Evil 7, it's a little bit like different. You're like, oh, this is like, is this what potentially it's like? And I can say that, yes, there are parts of America that are very much like that. But when we suddenly whisk to this quote unquote Europe, it does feel like a fairy tale. Like it feels unreal in a way that 7 felt so real.
Interesting.
And I'm not able to recover from that now that I've played them back to back.
Yeah.
It's too much for me. Like I said, it's like going from the first Resident Evil movie to the last Resident Evil movie and just watching them back to back and being like, wow, I understood what happened in between. It feels like we missed so much of what could have made it really great.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad game. It's just, it doesn't add, for me, anything to any kind of ongoing canon, really.
I completely get that. Like I say, and it's I think it would be difficult to deny just what a leap in a different direction this is. I think if I was to play devil's advocate, it is, you know, with 7, you're not wrong. I'm not saying that they would have just, like, a sequel should be the same thing again, obviously. But it was important to take what worked and move it in a different direction. You always want to be coming up with something different. Did they go too far with it? Almost certainly. But, I mean, the success of it speaks for itself, I guess. I will say what's quite interesting is that the director, Sato-san, in an interview with IGN when the game came out, said that they started developing Village 6 months before 7 even came out, which is, of course, not unusual. So they didn't really know if 7 was going to be a success. They could, of course, pivoted, but some of the building blocks were already being put in place before 7 even released. So I guess they had to make some amount of decisions. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, if they felt like, oh, actually, this is such a success that maybe we should make something closer to this, I also wouldn't have been surprised by that. And maybe, as you said earlier, when the kind of leaks and reports and even the like early trailers came out, confirmed it, and we saw all the werewolves and vampires and stuff, we were like, oh, this is insane. And that is because 7 was so grounded. And you're like, how can this be the sequel to that? I think time has been kind enough for it. But you're right, playing them back to back, that's probably not a thing that you should do. Steve, how do you feel about the story of Resident Evil Village?
On a macro scale, we get the introduction proper to the series, the evil BSAA. We get Chris going rogue and
We haven't
making
talked about
some
Chris.
questionable
Yeah.
decisions. And we get Ethan getting closure on his events in Dulvig, Louisiana, to Village in some part of Romania that I'm not sure is actually established. Some reason has people dressed like American Puritans with American accents, but it's in Romania, honest. It's some of the wider scope stuff's interesting, but we still haven't really had any payoffs to it. But the small scale stuff, Ethan's arc is great. You know, he goes from literally man trying to find his daughter and will do anything, finds out a horrible truth about himself and his history, still saves his daughter in the end, goes out like a champ, fist bump, rip king. You know, that's cool. Then you look at Miranda, and her plan has been, since her child died, to basically worship a fungus, kill everyone around her to program a fungus, find a host for her daughter. Not sure. Let's break it first. Okay, now let's have this man wander around and kill my subordinates because it'll be a laugh. And now I will kill him. I will succeed in my plan, but somehow it still fails. Also, Chris is here.
Yes.
Like, compared to the opening hook, the original trailer where we have the village going through some serious friggin' turmoil, we have Chris blast Mia several times in the face. Yes, we know now that that's Miranda and all the other bits, but all we have is Chris be basically a bell end to Ethan throughout the progress of the story until he gives you an armored battle tank and says, yeah, try and keep your head down, keep a low profile in a tank.
Time for BattleBot, son.
Yeah, well, you called it Brum last time, Adam. Yeah, I appreciate that reference. It's just, there are some stupid things, and there are some unanswered things, and there are things left on the cutting room floor. I haven't even mentioned the Ada the Wong, Eileen the Crow cosplay thing going on, where she was going to rescue Ethan because finally Ada could be outside of a Leon game.
Oh, imagine.
Much like Ada was absent in Requiem, she could have had a thing in this instead. But anyway, that being said, on the personal player level of Ethan, his story is fine. Everything else is kind of, what does a Kadu even do? It's just an evil little fetus thing that apparently turns you into a werewolf or an electric man, or it makes your blood disease infinitely worse. Or Moreau just vomits on cheese. He's having a terrible time.
Can I interject on this? I just had a what I feel like is maybe a mini revelation in my brain.
Yeah, go on.
So the Mega Mycete stores like consciousness, right? Of like
Right.
and stuff. And like vampires and werewolves are all human legends. Is there a chance that the Mega Mycete maybe can't differentiate between actual thoughts and real life things and in our brains where we like to spend, flights of fancy and whimsy? Is it possible that when the Mega Mycete takes your consciousness, it's also taking like all of your fiction that's in your head?
Yeah, it's taking
And therefore, like lichens are lichens because humans talk about werewolves. So the Mega Mycete is like, oh, werewolves are a thing because all these brains that I've conglomerated all seem to, have at least a werewolf story or a werewolf thought in them. So maybe that must be real. So let's make that real.
Yeah. So basically, the Mega Mycete.
Morpheus talked to the Mega Mycete and said, "Your mind makes it real."
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though in a way, right?
The Mega Mycete is
It's like
basically
information.
So the Megamycete is basically just Gen AI, where it's just like, this is what you wanted, right?
Exactly.
Fuss it out.
Yeah. If you go to Capcom, it is just the Megamycete thumping through
in the
there.
office.
Yeah.
But like, in the actual like story, Miranda seems to think it's a good thing that someone is basically physically obliterated and is then added to the Megamycete's records, as she calls them. Which, as we find out in the DLC, is basically she's spoilers for another part of Village if you haven't played Shadows of Rose yet for some reason, but are here in a 5-year anniversary. The Megamycete basically has its own mold matrix of various things and pieces, and it has a simulacrum, but not an actual version of Duke in it as well. So you don't even have to die to be in it. So why is she killing people then?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Fun. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun, I guess. She's mad. I think the answer is she's mad. I think, to be fair, I don't want to gloss over, by the way, just to kind of move in a different direction. The Chris Redfield in this game, absolutely awful version of Chris Redfield. I feel really bad for Jeff Sheen playing the role here. He doesn't, I think at the time we said, I don't know if he's a bad Chris, but I can't separate the fact that his voice is Carlos to me. So, but I do now think that maybe he's just the wrong fit for Chris. And it certainly doesn't help Chris's writing in this, as everyone knows, is terrible. Like, nobody actually sat down and thought about Chris's role in the story. He was just there because we needed to put a memorable face on the cover. And he's connected to Ethan already, I guess. It absolutely makes no sense, his role in the story. Just, I'm going to shoot Mia and not tell you why, and constantly be like, Ethan, why are you here? Get away from us. It's like, because you shot my wife and then put me in a van, and then the van turned over, and then you just left me in the snow. What did you expect me to do? Like, it's complete nonsense. Yeah, it's very, very unfortunate that at the time of recording, this is still the most recent version of Krish that we have. Even if his team kind of chastised him towards the end of the game for being an asshole about this, it's not enough that this was allowed to go through for me. Chris's role in the story makes absolutely no sense, and that the fact that that's how you treat one of your legacy characters is bizarre to me. And maybe I had this thought on this replay. Maybe we should be happy that Jill hasn't come back. Because imagine if they did stuff like this to Jill Valentine after all this time. It's just complete lunacy that this was allowed to be included in the game. Because if you removed it and just put some guy in, it would be kind of a bit more forgivable, I guess. But it's meant to be Mr. Hero Pants himself, Chris Redfield. It's just bizarre, and it still makes me mad all this time later, clearly. Mika, what do you think of the story of Resident Evil Village?
Possibly the weak point
Yeah.
so far at the point of like the playthrough I'm doing. I remember when I was playing this just the other day and you popped in.
Yep.
It literally like it popped in. The only thing you said was, "Oh, this is about the time when that girl tells Ethan to take care of his family, despite the fact that Ethan's never mentioned it." Bye. And about 30 seconds later, this person's like, "Hey, bye, Ethan. Take care of your family." And it's like, she's right. He didn't mention anything. He didn't say a damn word.
Yep.
And it's not the only point. We talked a bit about, kind of the plot threads that like link them all together. It is absolutely bonkers balls bananas, and I'm on record as saying that I think that that's when Resident Evil is at its strongest, and is the most fun. I just feel like in this one, like you get away with it in a game like Requiem because all of Requiem is so referential, right? And this one was not as referential as Requiem was, I felt. So
Absolutely.
there's like not even nostalgia bait for why something is so bonkers. Overall, I think it's a good time. I gauge video games and whether or not I am entertained while playing them, and I didn't feel that I wasted my time replaying this one. So
That's fair.
yeah.
My only other thing that I've got on story that I've got written down here is the same thing. Our listeners are probably bored of me bringing this up, but it won't be the last time. I still think it's a shame that we'll never get more of Mia. She's such a character with interesting untapped potential. Her association with the connections that makes her a criminal, and lots of dangling mysteries about what that means moving forward, considering we know that Rose is still about in 2036 and associated with people like Chris and the Hound Wolf Squad. And she mentions in Shadow of Rose, I haven't seen Mum in such a long time. So what happens to her? Does she finally kind of go down for her misdeeds, even though she gets witness protection between Seven and Village? Maybe there's more to it, but I don't know. I just doubt we'll ever get it, which is a shame because she's presented as a wholesome-ish mother character, bit of a damsel in distress, I guess, because Ethan has to save her in Seven, and then in Village as well. She's the quote-unquote victim at the beginning of the game, and then obviously it turns out to not be the case, and she's been in a cage the entire time. But, like, I don't know, there's some darkness to that, so it'd be nice to know more about her. But also, yeah, you know, more about the Lords. The Duke remains an enigmatic mystery and stuff like that would have been nice to get a little bit more on. Shadows of Rose does kind of fill in a few blanks, but not a whole lot. But there we go. Let's talk about presentation of the game. I think we just talked about the story being a low point. The presentation maybe a high point, I think, overall. Mika, what did you think of the visuals and the audio of Resident Evil Village?
Audio design is off the chain, but they've been doing great at that for a while. At least in my experience, like playing through this game is a lot of fun unless you have the lightsaber equipped, in which case that crackling just is the worst earworm and completely ruins the vibe for me. I think that visual design is lovely, if not perhaps stretched by the game's size and scope. One of the things that we noticed in our, or at least in the early parts of the game, is how much asset reuse happens.
Yeah.
Where there's like one sack of potatoes that they have in the RE Engine's asset library, and you certainly see that stack of potatoes a whole lot. The same with the one barrel asset that they made. I think that in thinking about that and why, I do think that maybe just because the game is so big, because it is, I think it might be, at least at the time, the biggest game on the engine.
Yeah, definitely.
That could have been part of it. I think for a game that came out as long ago as it did, 6 years ago was, a long time when it comes to fidelity and graphical quality in games, and that the game looks as good as it does, and that it's as stable as it is, so it plays anything. I heard you were playing it on your Switch 2 and forgetting that you were playing it on the Switch, which is really something about the graphics. All the zones look really cool. Like I said, they're all pretty unique. It did have that. It's ever since y'all mentioned it, I just can't unsee it again. That it is just like a theme park.
It really is.
This is this is horror world. This is this world, and I can't stop seeing it as that. I'm like, oh, the haunted house is pretty. The shooting gallery is pretty. It's a good looking game. I think like I said, I've already said that the audio design is great. The game sounds really good. Despite the fact that Lady D is the worst stalker in the game, like her commentary is at least good exposition when she's chasing you down. Because she does get more mad as you kill her kids. It's I think that's it. What I have for visual design and music.
Some really great performances in this as well. Like Lady D in particular. Obviously, she became like this viral hit, and it really. I think that's kind of aside from the performance. Like everyone saw the character design and that was enough. But it really helps, obviously, that Maggie just completely knocked it out of the park with just how kind of like wonderfully over the top and sort of pompous Lady D is. And she thinks very highly of herself. I think she's great. Ethan's performance in this, very good as well. He's a lot of fun. All of his best lines come from Village rather than Seven, and it's when he's kind of like that bit at the beginning where he punches a wall and goes, "Why is this happening again?" or whatever. Why does this keep happening? His swear down at Mother Miranda towards the end of the game, I really enjoy stuff like that, and obviously the softer moments as well. The Duke, also a great performance, I think, for what it's worth. Everyone's really, really good in this. Yeah, you mentioned the Switch 2 version. Going to shout that out, definitely. A big difference between the old cloud streaming Village demo that I played when that dropped. Being able to play this whole game on the Switch 2 was great. It's a very strong but not perfect rendition of the game, certainly. Like, if you wanted to play it on the go, this is a really fun way to do that. Looks great in handheld mode, I will say. The darkest and also the brightest areas of the game do struggle, like the cells under the castle, wandering through the dark in the very beginning where you're going through the dark house and the woods and stuff. That it doesn't really do great with the super blacks and super whites. There was very, very occasionally some pop-in. Basically just the parts where you get on the boat and go down the river. I noticed like trees popping in as I was going down the riverside. But for the most part, yeah, I kind of forgot I was playing on the Switch, if not for the fact that, the Switch 2 Pro Controller, great controller, but it's nothing like playing it on the DualSense or anything. The triggers aren't necessarily as fun or anything like that. But yeah, solid 60 frames a second in handheld mode, I think. Definitely can't complain about it. So if you're thinking about getting it for Switch, it's got my recommendation. But speaking more broadly just about the visual design element of the game, I will just keep it brief. I don't think you could ever accuse Village of being stale or boring. It's grand and it's small when it needs to be. It's opulent and it's cold and sort of pale when it needs to be. It hits all those moments perfectly. I think it's, for all of the talking about the variety in the areas, there's a lot of variety in that design philosophy for each area, and there is a lot of asset reuse, certainly, but there's also a lot of really great, incredible details throughout the game as well. Adam, how do you feel about the overall presentation of the game?
I love it. Yeah, this is a strong point for the game. Each section, feels appropriate, has the vibe that it should have. It looks great. It sounds great. Voice actors killed it. Maybe with the exception of maybe some Heisenberg, but I do kind of love how hammy he is. So too. I'm not gonna, I feel like maybe he stands out a bit because of like the way his delivery is, but I don't think it's a bad delivery. I do really enjoy it. It's just a bit wild,
What is that accent even supposed to be, man?
I know it's crazy, but it's
quote,
a decision,
European.
Yeah, generally European.
Yeah, but other than that, I think they nail it. Asset reuse doesn't bother me. Give me something that feels lived in. Like, one of the great strengths of the Resident Evil engine is the amount of stuff they can put in. It's the sheer amount. Like, if, Resident Evil 4, the original, is one of my favorite games, but damn, does that, obviously it's old, it's GameCube, but it feels empty. When you go in the houses, there's not really much there.
Yeah.
And then you look at, for example, Resident Evil 4 Remake, like, they stacked it. It feels lived in. And I don't care if they reuse assets if it can look like that, because it adds such a vibe,
big time,
to the game. It adds this, like, the village feels like it's been there for centuries. It really does. And every section in Resident Evil 8 does such a great job. The castle, the waterways, the house, Benevento, and then, even the factory. Like, as much as I'm not keen on it, it looks and it has its own vibe. And they nailed it. I think it's the strongest part of the game is the feeling, the visuals, the sounds, the kind of vibe that they're able to kind of pull off. They nailed it.
Yeah. I wanted to shout out Heisenberg, to be fair, since you mentioned it. He is definitely one of those characters where I was pleasantly surprised how much of the script I remembered on this playthrough as it was coming. There's a bunch of Heisenberg lines where it's like, I just can't resist saying this along with the character. Nothing like fresh American ground beef maniacal laughter. Like, stuff like that. There's so much. It's a great, ridiculous performance. Steve, how do you feel about the visuals and the audio in Village?
we are spoiled that I got to play Requiem earlier before this because it just put in stark contrast. Like later Raccoon City and Requiem, and then coming back to this was downright cozy. Going from grey stone and grey stone train station to all these like various lived-in buildings with their own little stories, uniquely dressed, and it was wonderful. The blood-soaked basement has such a dark, ominous vibe.
Yeah.
Most of the darkened areas where your torch decides to become ineffectual, and like you got the Violax or what? No, not the zombie ladies with the swords,
Morikers,
just coming out of the dark in the dungeons and stuff. As the kids say, the vibes are immaculate. Do the kids still say that? I hope they do.
Sure.
They should. Until you get to the stronghold, because I have to rag on that again. And that's just Greystone. Capcom, unless it's RE1's mansion basement lab, Greystone sucks. All right? Greystone sucks everywhere. We don't need it. We don't want it. I absolutely do not need it. All right? But, Beneviento's basement, Lady D's castle, even Moreau's like reservoir, the picturesque, like they do the cheeky, like, go to a little overpass and you get a vignette of the whole area. And it's like, this is some screenshot, scenic stuff right now. I can
absolutely
put this on a painting. But, probably the standout there is I would have that as a painting is the Beneviento vista, as you see the house and the waterfall. It's all very nice.
Yeah.
We know why the waterfall is there. It's to hide the screaming in the basement. Right? Even then, creepy ass graveyard with all the vibes. They did so well. They knocked it out of the park. Did not need any AI stuff either.
Right.
Capcom. Right. Yeah. I can't fault it at all. Soundtrack, a lot of it's wallpaper,
Yep.
A lot of it's a bit blunt, but then you have like your big moment tracks like Chris's Descent to Village, Passes Away, the big boss fight stuff. That's all great, I would imagine Final Descent to Village will probably be repurposed as Christopher Redfield's Murdering Things theme throughout the series from here on out, which is fine. That's cool. I know they've already used it like in RE-verse and all the rest of it. So
That doesn't count.
Guns all sound sufficiently punchy. Monsters all sound sufficiently monstery. I'm especially a fan of just the guttural when what is it? The flying things. They have a distinct like awful sound. I can't pronounce it. But that used to say sound.
Samka.
Yeah, Samka sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Sure,
sound
we'll go with
design. Yeah, the sound design, the visual design. This is like RE Engine, like Chef's Kiss peak. I've rambled on enough. I'm gonna just pass the mic. I enjoyed it a lot. Plus, I'm a sucker for snow. I'm always a sucker for snow.
My preferred, you're absolutely bang on. My preferred Vista though is the one that Capcom knew was the big one because it was all in like the trailers and stuff. But it is right at the beginning of the game as you're at the top of the hill and you can see the castle and the village below all covered in snow. That was my desktop wallpaper for
all the crows fly overhead.
Absolutely, as you come. Yeah, it's incredible.
Beautiful. One
of the best like shots, if you want to call it that, in a Resident Evil game. Period. I think just incredible. And as Mika kind of alluded to, this being like the biggest RE Engine game to that point, what a statement of intent as well. So yeah, massive agree, big fan of that all around. Steve, you and I are the only people I think who have had a chance to go through Shadows of Rose recently. I hadn't replayed this, I think, since it came out. I might have got a couple of playthroughs in when it first dropped because I'm pretty sure there was like a difficulty option. So I probably went through it on multiple difficulties. But yeah, I went back to it for the first time since release. I'd be curious to see how you found it because I had probably the same experience I had in 2022 when it released, which is to say a mixed bag.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It feels like very much more even linear compared to the base game, and you feel very disempowered. And if you do it the wrong way, you are probably going to get battered by I don't even know what they're called. The mold men who nick faces. That's their name now. Okay?
I think they're
Put it in the wiki.
face eaters. Yeah, face eaters or something. Let me look up.
But the actual like encounters with the Duke or the evil Duke or whatever you want to call him, evil man with mask, and the way that he keeps barbing you and setting traps for you. There's one really good set piece where there is these like flowers you have to dismantle, and he just traps you in a room that's filling with evil mold juice, and you have to discern the real ones from about 50 fake ones, and you have like Ethan's ghost or whatever the frig helping you. a good set piece, but that's mostly what it is. It's like fun set pieces with some fun visual set dressing, and then you got the odd little bit of meandering around to get supplies. She does get power-ups, but they are so situational. It's not like a Metroidvania where like Samus got new boots or anything, except for the final fight. But that's also in a very unique. Like, I feel like that Vista image, the one that they used in the trailer you spoke of, they kind of redo it in like this nightmare one where the sky's bleeding for some reason.
Yep.
And that is such a neat visual, like seeing the Matrix collapse around your eyes. But other than that, it's okay. It's more if you're in it for the story of Rose versus Miranda, that's it. You know, because the gameplay is a weaker version of Village, basically.
Yeah.
With a stun.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. It's a weird little beast. It's a bit of a strange mishmash of reusing stuff, but also wondering where some parts of it went. Like, we get Castle D, but there's no Lady D in it, which is such a weird thing considering what a big, like, groundswell there was around the character. You go to House Beneviento, but then you don't go back to any of the other areas, and there's a boss fight at the end, which is a kind of a reused boss fight. So gameplay wise, it was okay. It might have been a little bit of a slog. There are some highlights. The House Beneviento thing is split into two parts. The second part was like the stealth section. I thought I hated it then, and I hate it now. I think the spin on the first half is incredible, and because I haven't played it since it dropped, oh god, it did something to me. It's creepy as hell, isn't it? I was really glad they didn't just put a second baby in the basement and they decided to do something else. When it comes to
no, you got Giant Mother.
Yeah. When it comes to the story, I'm still very much in the same place I was with it before. I think the character work is great, but the fantastical jump that this adds to the end of it. Jesus Christ, Adam, if you thought Village was wild and out there, this makes Village look like Citizen Kane. It feels incredible. If this makes Village just feel like your average trip down the shops, like it's unbelievably just nonsense, a bridge too far, Fantasyland, supernatural.
It feels like Labyrinth.
It does feel like the Labyrinth.
You know, I expect Bowie to come out with his like crystal balls and start going, "Dance, magic, dance." It's bizarre.
Rosemary and the Haunted Hard Drive, as I've taken to calling it. It's absolute nonsense. And as like the epilogue to the Winter story, it's kind of it leaves me with a strange taste in my mouth because I do like the parts with Rose and Ethan and all that stuff, but unfortunately it's just, we go from the 7 being what it is to the end of Shadows of Rose, and it's a hell of a journey. I could take or leave it, certainly. Okay then, let's sum things up. Let's conclude this. How do we feel about Village in the present day? What do you think its lasting legacy will be? Adam, let's start with you.
I think it's still a good game. It's a really fun game to play. It's very easy to stand alone. I don't even think you need to play 7 to get what you want out of 8. I think it might be better if you don't play 7 and you just want to play more modern Resident Evil. Then it's a great spot to sit in. I think it's a fun game. It's enjoyable. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's just crazy. It's the juxtaposition of it being a sequel to the first, or not to the first one, to 7, is where it all kind of falls down for me. But as a game, like, I don't have any real complaints about it. It's fun. It's snappy. It doesn't demand too much of you. I just wish it kind of followed on from 7 a bit more realistically than it did. But, that's my own personal issue with it. I don't think it's a bad game in the slightest.
Mika, what's your final thoughts on Village in 2026?
I think it was a wonderful entry in the series. It was a nice way to, like, as we've said, cap the Winter storyline. It did a lot for what we know the game to be now. It combined a lot from what the different games were then. And I think, ultimately speaking, it's a strong entry for someone in the series. I know for a fact that somebody who's literally told me that they only played 7 and Village and wanted to play the older Resident Evils before Requiem because they had never played those. They only ever played those ones. So, that person went and got, the new ones for Director's Cut 2 and 3, and then 2 and 3 make, and has been playing through the series.
That's cool.
It's good for that as well. It brought somebody to the series who wants to experience more of it, and that was their hope to do it. I do doubt we'll see any expansion on it at all. Given their track record, we won't. So the lasting record will be, hey, it's sold a lot really quickly.
Yeah.
Because the way that Capcom develops games.
It's an interesting point that you've raised there, and that's something that I kind of wanted to include in my conclusion, is that I guess it's a bit of a flavour taster. I don't know how well people think about Village now, but with Requiem being as big as it is, and a return to classic stories, which are both good things, I do feel it is a bit of a shame that Village might be overlooked in the future. I think that it's good, as I said, that its story is kind of siloed a little bit. It's in its own little place, and it's something I really like about it, because even with its plot holes and its nonsense, it doesn't have major ramifications elsewhere. And if it's flawed, then that's fine. But it gave us a new space to theorize, and it expanded the universe out, and it let us try new things. And I think that was cool. And I think 7 and Village, even though they are kind of diametrically opposed, they're such a fun pair of games together that, wonderfully polar opposites working in this strange kind of harmony that absolutely shouldn't work, and maybe it doesn't, but I don't care because I enjoy it. This Requiem gets a lot of plaudits, quite rightfully, for being a Resident Evil game that does loads of different things for Resident Evil fans of all kinds. We've said it since day dot on the podcast that Resident Evil can be whatever you want it to be to a certain extent. And I know maybe this sounds a little bit contradictory to my feeling so far on the Krieger trailer at the beginning. But we said it before, Resident Evil, you can come in at so many different places, and your version, your interpretation of what Resident Evil is, can be completely different from someone else's. And Requiem tries to do a lot of combining of those things. Overall, pretty successfully, I think most people would agree. But I don't think Village gets the compliments it does for basically doing the same thing. Sure, it does have 2 perspectives, but when it released, it only had one, and the third-person perspective obviously is a bit haphazard. It's obviously not designed with that in mind. But it is this big melting pot of all these different Resident Evil ideas, tonally, all the zones being their own kind of thing, as we talked about, all these different gameplay elements. It is this crazy, shaken up version of the Resident Evil formula. That said, I expected to dislike this more than I did coming back to it. As time has gone on since, the issues I've had with it have stuck with me. But going back and playing it, I was really reminded of all the things I really enjoyed about it. So going back and listening to our podcasts and hearing me say, this is really up there. I'm enjoying this, and maybe it'll land in the upper echelon. And then when people ask me to rank the games, I usually put it somewhere in the middle. Maybe I need to reevaluate this, because it's a lot of fun, even though it's nowhere near perfect. Steve, your final thoughts on Village 5 years on?
Yeah, 5 years on, and I still, if you take the broad strokes of the narrative and weird wonkiness and the linearity, there are things that will make me want to gripe. The bonus Mercenaries mode is also a little bit, calling it Mercenaries was a mistake. It's close to raid mode or something like roguelike elements. They're okay, but if Village at its worst is okay, it's still got a lot of peaks off of that okay that are really fantastic. No one walks into Beneviento and comes out the same person. Lady D is probably going to be a thing in the franchise in some form referenced forevermore. Ethan, bless him, man, the dude goes out like a king. All right, I will not take any shade on Ethan Winters anymore. The fandom killed him for this game, or rather, they didn't like him in 7, so he was killed in this game. Or at least that's what it feels like. But he goes out so well. You know, there's the little epilogue that like basically implies that Chris is still alive in like 200 years or 30 years, whatever it is. You know, does that suck? Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the beat by beat adventure of Village, it's a very accessible game, and you don't need to play any of the other Resident Evil titles, not even 7, to enjoy it. I feel like this could be the non-Resident Evil's fan Resident Evil game in a way, and it doesn't get enough credit for that. So all that being said, Heisenberg was a terrible boss fight. So Capcom, please, I want to retake Village. This is my clock tower. Can we have a new version of Village, please? I want a director's cut. I want Village. I want the downfall of the Village. Someone please take the mic off me before I ramble to death.
Let me just mute him.
I think what we have to remember as well is like, you know, with any rebooting, quote unquote, of a franchise or reinventing, you know, like just for a weird analogous kind of idea, you know, the first 150 whatever Pokemon I consider to be my Pokemon. And there are many Pokemon like phases after that people kind of cling to. And there's going to be a point where, you know, Resident Evil 7 and 8 being like the refresh of the franchise, there's going to be young players that's their Resident Evil. That's what Resident Evil is to them. And, you know, not necessarily Chris and Leon and Jill and, you know, all of the great times we've had. So, you know, it's going to be a point where these are the classics.
And I will say for those fans, at the very least, they got their hero to go out like a champ. Like I will say with Ethan, at least he got a complete kind of story arc. Shadows of Rose being kind of wishy, kind of whatever. But at least he got to go out. Unlike every new game that comes up, we're like, how old is Chris now? Oh, all right, okay. And one last point on that. Shadows of Rose, need we be reminded, 2036, the Hound Wolf Squad's still around. So we got 10 more years of those guys in the canon. So we've got that to look forward to. Thanks, Village. Right, well, nothing else remains for me but to thank the panel, our contributors, and our community. Join us on the First Aid Spray Discord server to hear the show early and check out our merch store or our Patreon to support the show. Don't forget that these and our social media links can be found at faspraypod.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all good podcasting apps. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a review where you can and spread the good word. It's hard to tease what's next outside of dropping the Biohazard 4D Executor mini pod we did. I expect our new episode will take us back to Requiem. It will really depend on what exactly this mysterious mini game we're apparently getting in May is. I guess we'll all collectively have to see. Thank you to the panel. You can follow most of us on Blue Sky. I'm at Cy White, Steve is at FB Steve, and Mika is at Biblically Correct. And finally, thank you for listening, and have a good week.
Near the mutant site, the Mega My Seat has dead people in it. I want to say that K9's died off camera and she's using his ghost to impersonate with Rose. And you can tell me otherwise, Capcom, because Hound Wolf Squad suck.
No. Ethan died in 7, and everything since Jack stomped on his head is all just in the Mega My Seat. So that's why Chris is so weird and different and has a different voice, because he's just the memory of someone that's in the My Seat who met Chris.
Yeah, they did this
so don't worry.
In Final Fantasy 14 as well.
So everything from Ethan getting stomped in 7, Shadows of Rose, and 8 is all just taking place inside the Mega My Seat.
Wait. Does that include Requiem as well? Can we undo this whole Spencer bullshit? Yeah!
All of it.
Of course. None of it's real anymore. It's just a big fungus brain who doesn't know the difference between stories and real life.
Just a big fungus brain is a sentence of all time.
Wait till the Mega My Seat learns about Power Rangers.